one principle of economics states that the country's standard of living depends on its ability to produce goods and services. It's the production that determines the standard of living. And we have several factors of production. We have land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Now, the question is, will an increase in GDP mean a good thing for the economy? Yes or no? The answer is it depends. You're going to ask then, is it the real GDP or the nominal GDP? So what's the difference between nominal GDP and real GDP? Nominal GDP is GDP at current prices. Real GDP is GDP at constant prices. So the simple formula for GDP, assuming that we focus only on price and quantity, we just simply multiply the price with the quantity. If the price is 10 and the quantity produced is 10, then the GDP is 100, assuming there's only one product involved. Okay? And that is using the expenditure approach. Now the question is it a good thing that the GDP increases? Just like this one. You look at the GDP, it is increasing from 1995 to 1999. Not at all, right? Because this is only the nominal GDP. The nominal GDP it's not actually adjusted on the prices. Wala sa kapaluan, itaas sa GDP, dili dahil tungkol sa production, but because of the increase in price. So that's a problem because the GDP increases not because of quantity produced has increased, but because there's an inflation. Inflation is the problem. Okay? So how do we solve then the real GDP? So real GDP is equal to nominal GDP divided by the GDP deflator. In our case, we're using the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, the price level, times 100. Let's use this one as an example, this table here. If you look at the data from 1995 to 1999, the nominal GDP has increased. You might say it's a good thing because the GDP has increased. Meaning to say the production has evolved, the production has increased. Is it really true? But if you look at the CPI or the GDP deflator, the CPI, the price also has increased. So we need to know if there's really an increase in production or the real GDP. So we use this formula here. So your real GDP is equal to nominal GDP divided by the GDP deflator times 100. The answer here for 1995 it's 4,500. 1996, 4,500. 1997, 4,500. 1998, 4,500. And also 1999, it's 4,500. Your nominal GDP has increased, but the real GDP did not. Still the same. Okay? So how do you determine if the GDP, the real GDP has really increased? How do we determine the growth rate? Kanang makadungog sa TV nga, ang ekonomiya sa Pilipinas is improving. What do we really mean by that? It means that the GDP, there's a growth in our GDP, real GDP. So how do you solve? Real GDP for the current year, okay? Growth rate is equal to GDP, real GDP. We're talking about real GDP here, okay? Real GDP 2 minus real GDP 1 over real GDP 1 times 100. So let's use this example here, 1995 to 1996. The real GDP is 4,500 minus 4,500. What do you think is the answer here? Times 100. So this is 0, okay, over 45 times 100. So the answer here is actually there's none. There's no growth rate. Are you following? Yeah, there's no growth rate here. Nada. Zero.